KOKORO. Episode 02. When I saw the teacher at the tea house, he was about to take off his kimono and enter the sea. I then blew my wet body in the wind and came up from the other side. There were many black heads moving between them that blocked their eyes. Unless there were special circumstances, I might have missed the teacher. Despite the fact that the beach was so crowded and my mind was so blunt, I quickly found a teacher because he was accompanied by a Westerner. The very white skin color of the Westerner caught my attention as soon as I entered the tea house. Wearing a pure Japanese yukata, he stood facing the sea with his arms folded, throwing it on the floor. He wasn't wearing anything but the one monkey crotch we wore. It was strange to me. 2 days ago, I went to Yokohama as it was crouching on the sand and watching the Westerners enter the sea for a long time. The place where I lowered my hips was on a slightly elevated hill, and the back door of the hotel was right next to it. So while I was still, quite a lot of men came out to the beach. However, none of them had the torso, arms, and crotch exposed. Women tended to hide their bodies. Mostly, he wore a rubber hood on his head, and the colors of shrimp brown, dark blue, and indigo floated in the waves. In my eyes, who had just witnessed such a situation, this Westerner who was standing in front of everyone with only one monkey crotch seemed very rare. Eventually he looked back at him and said something to the Japanese there, a word or two. The Japanese was picking up a washcloth that had fallen on the sand, but as soon as he picked it up, he wrapped his head and walked toward the sea. That person was a teacher. I was watching the backs of the two going down the beach side by side, just for curiosity. Then they stepped straight into the waves. Then they passed through the noisy crowds near the shallow shore and came to a relatively spacious place where they both started swimming. I headed offshore until their heads looked small. Then I turned back and came back straight to the beach. When I returned to the tea house, I immediately wiped my body and put on a kimono without bathing in the water of the well, and went somewhere quickly. After they left, I was still sitting on the original floor and smoking. At that time, I thought about the teacher with a daze. It didn't look like a face I had seen somewhere. But I just couldn't remember when and where I met. At that time, I was suffering rather than being boring. So the next day, I decided to go to the tea house again at the time when I met the teacher. Then the Westerners did not come and one teacher came wearing a straw hat. The teacher took his glasses, put them on the table, immediately wiped his head, wrapped his head, and went down the beach. When the teacher passed through a noisy person like yesterday and started swimming alone, I suddenly wanted to chase after that. I bounced shallow water over my head and came to a considerable depth, from which I cut my hand with the teacher as a landmark. Then, unlike yesterday, the teacher drew a kind of arched line and began to return to the shore from a strange direction. So my purpose was finally not achieved. When I went up to the land and waved my hand with a drop of water and entered the tea house, the teacher was already wearing a kimono and went out in the wrong place.